He never charged a trench. He never fired a shot. Yet the decisions made using his work determined where thousands would advance or where they would die. This is the story of a man who mapped a war. In 1914, Europe went to war with maps that were already obsolete. Borders were political. Terrain was not. Armies moved through mountains, forests, and river valleys that few commanders had ever seen in person. Many relied on maps created for civilian use, never intended to support large-scale military operations. For multinational empires, this problem was even more severe. Units were deployed across unfamiliar regions, often commanded by officers who did not speak the local language and had never set foot on the ground they were ordered to defend or attack. Orders were written in distant headquarters, based on assumptions rather than direct observation. In modern war, knowing where you are can matter as much as knowing who your enemy is. Before satellites, digital terrain models, or real-time intelligence, armies relied almost entirely on maps drawn by hand. These maps were often months, sometimes years, out of date, yet they were treated as authoritative. Decisions involving tens of thousands of men were made on the basis of lines drawn on paper. One of the men tasked with solving this problem was Maximilian Ritter von Hoen. He was not a frontline officer. He was a military cartographer, responsible for transforming terrain into information that generals could act upon. From Vienna, von Hoen oversaw the production of detailed military maps for the Austro-Hungarian Empire, maps that guided movements across multiple fronts. His work was precise, technical, and largely invisible. It involved measurement, calculation, and constant revision as new information arrived from the front. Yet every planned advance, every defensive position depended on it. At the time, military maps were not simple drawings. They were technical systems. Elevation, slope, vegetation, and access routes were encoded into contour lines and symbols. These maps were produced using optical instruments, ground surveys, mathematical calculations, and later in the war, early aerial photography. Each new photograph, each revised measurement, had to be translated into usable information under intense time pressure. Even a small error, a missing ridge or an underestimated incline could turn an advance into a disaster. Mapping did not fire weapons. It determined where weapons could be used at all. In this sense, mapping was not combat technology. It was decision technology. Every arrow on a battle map represented hours of observation and calculation. Every movement order relied on the assumption that the map reflected reality. When it did not, the consequences were measured in lives. After the war, memory focused on sacrifice and heroism. Nations remembered soldiers, battles, and victories, stories that could be placed on monuments. Technical contributors did not fit easily into this narrative. Their work crossed borders. It lacked dramatic moments, and it challenged the idea that wars are decided only by courage. As empires collapsed, their institutions were dismantled, their archives scattered, and figures like von Hoen quietly disappeared from public memory. Every war leaves behind monuments, but it also leaves behind systems, maps, methods, and technologies that shape decisions without ever being seen. Remembering war is not only about who fought, it is also about who made fighting possible. Memory, like mapping, always depends on what we choose to include and what we leave out,